And just like that, welcome to Agent Power Huddle. My name's Ed Laine. I'm out of the Seattle market, as you can tell. And this is Scripting Friday. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to dive right in. So every week on Fridays, we cover the scripts and dialogues that help you win and get what you need when you need it. And today we've been focused on sellers for a while. And today we're going to talk about how to deal with sellers who want to overprice. They want to list their price at a number that's too high. So before I dive into the information I wanted to cover today, I want to remind everybody that if you want to make a seller understand the true market value of your home, of their home, you should use our color picture CMA tour process. There's a video from an Agent Power Huddle that I did in the fall where I covered this process. I'm not going to cover it today because I've already done it, but it is money. It is the best way to get a seller to be realistic. And if they aren't realistic, that's where today's content's going to come into play, right? Because in that process, what you do is you go through a series of comps, and in the process of going through those comps, their brain gets realigned to, maybe my house isn't worth what I was thinking, right? And then at the end, we have this continuum of comps, and we ask them, where on this continuum does your home fit? And every once in a while, they're going to say, I'm ignoring the continuum. I want X, right? So today, we're going to talk about, well, how do you respond to that? And then we'll also talk about, once you're into the listing, how do you get price adjustments after it's on the market? So what do you typically want to say to a seller that says, I want X? You could quit right there on the spot and say, well, I'm probably not the agent for you, right? That's not ideal because they're going to list it with somebody else for that too high of a number, and it's eventually going to sell for the right number, and they're going to get lowballed all the way down, right? You could be abusive or at least aggressive and say, would you pay X for this house? And make them feel kind of silly, right? That's not smart either. Offending people's never a good idea. Or you could do what a lot of realtors do and just say okie dokie, right? Have you guys ever seen Tommy Boy, the movie? I'm going to play a little clip from it.
All right, now it's sale time. So remember, we don't take no
shit from anyone.
No.
We don't take no prisoners.
We don't take no for an answer.
Oh yeah, we don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. We don't take no for an answer. No. Okie dokie.
No. Okie dokie. Oh, I love that. So as you guys all know, there's a lot of agents that don't even know how to value real estate, and they go and meet with a seller and they say, seller, what do you think your home is worth? And they say $10 million. And they go, okie dokie, right? They're yes men and yes women to just get a listing agreement signed. The problem with that is they are harming the seller, because in most conversations, when a seller first talks to a real estate broker, they almost feel like it's a negotiation, right? So in their head, they're thinking, I'd really like to get $1 million for my house. And so when the okie dokie agent says, what do you think your home is worth? They go, well, it's a negotiation, so I'm going to start a little high. $1.1 million. And then the agent says okie dokie, and they list it for $1.1 million. Well, now you're in this terrible situation where you're not getting traffic, you're not getting offers because you're overpriced, and you now have to do price reduction. And every time you do a price reduction, your days on market extends and buyers will lowball you. And you just have this, bouncing down to the bottom sort of trend until you do a big enough price reduction to intersect those lowball offers. It's just a terrible circumstance, right? And hopefully all of you are good at explaining to a seller that it's much smarter to price your home more reasonably And it actually will ultimately sell for more because of that, right? I'll give you one just really brief example. I had a listing. I sell a lot of bank-owned properties and have for a long time. And I got this foreclosure assignment and I did my BPO, which is a broker price opinion. That's what we call a CMA in the REO world. And this home came in at, it was probably 600,000 at the time. And the asset manager called me and just started screaming at me. Why are you trying to give away my house? And I said, what are you talking about? And she said, I have a second opinion BPO that says it's worth 900,000. And I go, let me guess. That second opinion BPO tells you it's a 3,500 square foot McMansion in this neighborhood. And she said, yeah. And I go, does it make any mention of the 9 bedrooms and 8 bathroom adult care facility that it actually is? She goes, no. And I said, that's why it's not going to sell for 900,000. It's a business. It's not a residence, right? We all know owner occupant buyers pay more for properties, right? So she ends up listing it in between, lists it for 725, and it bounces down and it sells for 580. If she had listed for 600, like I advised, it was sold for 600, might even gotten a little bump up, right? So if you can either use an example to communicate that to your clients or just explain when you start too high, you're going to do price reductions until it intersects those low ball offers. And I use my hands a lot when I'm trying to explain this to people because I'm showing them they're on this slippery slope down, right? So bottom line is you don't want to be the okie dokie guy or gal, right? If you're just jumping on, you missed a quick clip from Tommy Boy. And now I can't get my thing back. There it is. Okay. All right. So when you're having these conversations with sellers, you need 3 things, right? In order to succeed, you have to have their trust and confidence, right? You need to have data and you got to have a strategy, right? That's why that color picture CMA tour video is so valuable because it's actually a process. I always tell people, you only have the right to predict the outcome when you follow the same process every time, right? It's like making chocolate chip cookies. Are you going to change it every time you make them? Or are you going to land on one that's delicious and just do it that way every time? Well, real estate's a lot like that. In fact, in real estate, there's all these little processes that we do. And so if look at your own business, if you don't have a process for everything you do, build one. There's plenty of information on the internet. You can get checklists for listings going live or post-closing or fill in the blank, right? But have a plan, have a strategy. And when we speak with sellers, we talk about it as a list price strategy, right? And I covered this script or dialogue once before, but I'll do it here because it's relevant. When I'm talking to a seller, I tell them, here's kind of the crazy thing about my industry. Most real estate brokers are not very good at valuations, right? And I'll even interject. They might even just go with whatever you say. And the problem with that is you think it's a negotiation, blah, 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 right? My job is to tell you what your home is worth, but it's actually to give you 3 numbers, right? Your home has a market value. It's a singular number. It's not a range. So what did I do right there when I said that? I just threw darts at every agent they've spoken with, right? Because most agents say, oh, your house is worth between 675 and 710 or whatever. They quote a range. And I say, nope, your house has a market value. It's a singular number. And I'm going to tell you what that number is. The second number I'm going to tell you is my recommended list price strategy, because the list price and the market value are never the same number. And that's because you're using that list price to try and generate the third number, which is what does it ultimately sell for, and try and get that to be as high as possible. So I've already differentiated myself from other agents, right? When I come in and say, I'm actually going to give you 3 numbers, right? The market value, the list price, and what it's ultimately going to sell for. Just a different way to say ultimately what's going to happen. But the better you are at forecasting what's going to happen, the more trust they're going to have in you, right? All right. So when they have an inflated opinion of value, you're usually going to know that before they've even signed with you, right? Or maybe right after they've signed with you. By the way, I don't share my CMA with sellers until they've signed the listing agreement. Think about that for a second. Your number one asset is your brain, your opinion of value, right? Don't give it away until they hire you. And it's a really simple dialogue. Hey, now that I've seen your home, I'm going to do a bunch of work to get those 3 numbers figured out. But before I do that, you just need to hire me. Well, how do I do that? Oh, it's right here. I got the folder right here. Right? I actually, in my briefcase, I carry around a folder that's got all the listing paperwork. Right? And by the way, I don't know if you guys do this, but you might consider it. I also bring in that folder a cancellation agreement so that I tell them, you can fire me at any time, but please don't fire me. This is how I feed my family. And they giggle and I giggle and we move on. But cancellation agreements will make it easier for people to sign, right? So they'll tell you either before they hire you or maybe right after it's on the market, you can get like a grieving communication from your client who says, I knew we should have listed it higher or whatever, right? Or maybe you've been on the market, it still hasn't sold, and they're very resistant to doing a price reduction. So we're going to cover all of these today so that you have some dialogues you can use when you're in that circumstance, right? So if it's before you go live, you first have to understand that when you're listing properties and you run into one of these sellers, you should have in your own mind what's your comfort level for accepting a too high listing, right? Because if it's too high and it's not going to sell, it's a waste of your time and theirs, right? So like for me, if the seller's within 2, maybe 3% of market value, I will take that listing. And sometimes I'll get him to pre-agree to reduce it, or we're going to cover that dialogue as well. But if it's within range, I'll take that listing. But if he's smoking crack, I'm not going to take that listing. And I'll explain what I say in those circumstances, right? So just remember that you can pass on any listing, right? You don't have to take every listing. And I know if you're newer or if your business is slow right now, that's a hard thing to embrace. But man, it can be cathartic for you to pass on a listing when you know the person's a jackass and it's going to be difficult or whatever, right? And we all have that. You'll have that if you haven't had it already. You will. So don't put yourself in that position. You have, your time is valuable, right? One of the dialogues I use is, when somebody wants to hire me plus 7 others, I go, you know what? I choose to work with people that choose to work with me. And I'm not judging you for wanting to hire 7. I'm just not going to be one of the 7. And they go, well, wait, I want what you have. Yeah, okay, then you need to hire me, right? Exclusively. And then always have a plan for these conversations, for their listing, for everything you're doing in real estate, right? So what are some objection handlers you can use when somebody says, I hear what you're saying, Christine, that it's worth 900, but I want to try for 925 or whatever, right? Well, you can say, I would rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 90 days from now. And use the word 90 specifically, because if I say 30 days from now, they might go, well, I don't mind waiting 30 days to sell, but I'm inserting into my script the idea that will resonate with them that, oh crap, I never even thought about my house still being on the market in July or whatever 90 days is, right? So I'd rather disappoint you today than disappoint you 90 days from now. And a lot of times they'll go, what do you mean? Well, a home that's overpriced won't get traffic, right? I always let the market be the bad guy. The market is giving us feedback. The market is telling us that we're priced too high. Okay? You can also use price bracketing as an argument to get them more reasonable, right? Like use my example of 925. You guys all know what price bracketing is. I'll give you the script that I use in the listing presentation to explain it. I have a slide dedicated to it. I go, have you ever heard of price bracketing? And they go, no. And I go, well, have you started looking already for your next house? Because in most cases they will have, right? They've gone on Zillow or Redfin or whatever. And I go, have you noticed that the prices of the homes that you're looking at on those apps ends in 900, 950, or 999? And they go, yeah. I go, or 888 because they're trying to manipulate the Chinese buyer. And they laugh and they go, yeah. And I go, that's evidence that none of those listing brokers know how to market properties on the internet because of price bracketing. So here's the way I explain it. Let's say your house, and I'll pick a number that is clearly not their value, right? Because I don't want them to think that I'm tipping my cards on what I think their home's worth. So if I'm in your $900,000 house, I go, let's say your house is worth $400,000. If I'm in a $400,000, let's say your house is worth $900,000, right? I want them to focus not on what the number might mean, but focus on the number, right? I go, if I list your house for $399, $999, the buyer who's set up their search, because every app, the first question it asks them is, what's the min and max price you want, right? So the guy or gal who's searching from 350 to 400, they will see it. And I use my hands when I'm explaining this. And I go 350 to 400, they'll see it. But the guy who's searching from 400 to 450, he won't see it. But if all we did was increase that list price by $1, right, from $399, $999 to $400, we double the eyeballs that would see it. And by doing that with my hands, it's very visual and it causes them to go, oh, yeah. So now back to my 925 example with Christine. 900 is much smarter of a list price, right? Especially at those higher numbers, because at the lower numbers, they tend to do it in $25,000 increments. But then at closer to $1 million, they do them at 50, and then over $1 million, they do $100,000 increments. So you kind of want to be cognizant of that, but it helps you get a seller to be more realistic down to 900 in my example, right? So that's using price bracketing as an argument to adjust the price downward. And to be honest, if it comped at 880, I would bump it up to 900. So I'll use price bracketing in both directions because I want it to be at that big threshold number. Here's another objection handler. Hey man, I totally understand that's your goal, but it's a huge mistake to be overpriced during the number one highest traffic period of time of the listing. You guys all know that the first 2 weeks is the highest traffic area, right? So when I go to these conversations or these meetings, I have paper with me. I'll pull something out of my folder and flip it over and I'll draw it for them. And I'll go, so here's typical traffic. And that is the 2-week mark, right? And I'm just drawing it. It's very rudimentary, but I wanted to have it on the screen so you could see what I am drawing while I'm talking about that 2-week traffic window, right? Well, if we're priced up here during those 2 weeks and then we do a price reduction, we've totally screwed the pooch, right? So we don't want to do that. We don't want to squander that traffic. So using a visual aid will help somebody realize, okay, because, you guys have all had it, a conversation where the seller's like, "Yeah, I'm really hoping that I can get 925, you know? Well, if we go on the market at 925 and we get 0 showings, we need to adjust quickly because of this, right? And I'll give you a dialogue that we use for that. So, again, the market's the bad guy, right? The market's giving us feedback. The market's telling us we're overpriced, right? Agents have given us feedback. Lovely home, just priced too high or whatever. In my market here in Seattle, we have showing time. I imagine most of you also have showing time, right? And you set it up so that it auto emails them 6 questions after the showing and it gathers that feedback. Well, if they don't fill it out, call them, get the feedback, right? Especially if you've had limited showings. The people that did show, you need to know what they thought, what their client thought, right? I'm pretty good at valuations, but I could miss the mark. And if I miss the mark, I need to know, right? A lack of showings is feedback. In fact, there's an axiom in real estate. Have you guys heard this one? I say this with every listing. There's a saying in real estate, 30 days or 20 showings with no offers means we are overpriced. So write that down. 30 days or 20 showings without any offers means we're overpriced. Right? Because think about it. If we go 30 days without any showings or limited showings and no offers, that's telling you that people are seeing it online and going, yeah, that's already too high. I'm not even going to go see it. Or if they come through it 20 times or 20 different people and they don't write an offer, then they also think it's overpriced for its condition, right? So if I use this dialogue, it helps me get a price reduction if I have a listing that's on the market for, 3 weeks. And I say 3 weeks, which is shorter than 30 days, specifically because I want to 2-step the price reduction, right? So 1 week shy of the 30-day mark, I will bring up the axiom and I'll say, I call my sellers every week. Hey, here's the feedback. Here's the activity. Here's, I give them all the reverse prospecting numbers. I give them all the data about traffic and feedback that I've garnered in the last week, every week. Because remember, and you guys should all do the same if you're not, human brains go to very dark places in the absence of information, right? Just think of, have you ever heard a parent say, you didn't call me when you were supposed to, you could have been in a ditch, right? That's just a very common and simple example of how if we don't get information, our brains tend to assume the worst, right? So that's why even if you have nothing to report, you should still talk to your sellers every week and say, hey, we had another week of a shutout. We had, a little bit of visibility online, but no showings. That's not good. We're now at 21 days on the market. So that in that little scenario I just described, that would be a time to say, there's a saying in real estate, 30 days or 20 showings without an offer means we're overpriced. So I'm not saying we should overprice, or I'm not saying we should adjust the price right now. But by this time next week, we will be at 30 days. And we should make an adjustment then. Right? What does that do? That actually gives them hope, right? Because they're like, oh man, I sure hope it sells this weekend because I don't want to do a price reduction, right? So I'll say, so since I got to move you guys out of the way. Since we're at 23 days on market right now, we don't need to do anything yet. So just say a little prayer that this weekend goes well. And if it does, or if it doesn't, we're going to want to do a price adjustment next week. So be thinking about that. And what a lot of sellers will say right then is, what do you think I should adjust it to, right? And remember, if you've been coming to this weekly scripting thing for a while, you know that I always say our system works best if launched on a Thursday. That includes price reductions, right? And why is that? I can give a quick explanation. The reason is buyers agents start scheduling their weekends, tours, and showings on Thursday and Friday. So we want to put our listings live Thursday afternoon. We want to do our price reductions Thursday afternoon. And that way it's near the top of their hot sheets when they start deciding where they're going to go, right? So if I make my seller calls every Friday. So I can inoculate them to a price reduction next Thursday, but I give them hope that hopefully it sells this weekend, right? We can even do some more open houses to help facilitate that, right? Then I say, so I'm going to call you on Tuesday to let you know how the weekend went. And if we don't have an offer in hand, we'll discuss how much to adjust the price. And a lot of sellers will ask you right then, what do you think, right? So you should already have an idea. Now, the nice thing about price reductions is they're a combination of updating the CMA, right? Because there could be some new data. There could be an inferior house or even a superior house that went into escrow and ours didn't. Like, that's all information that is relevant to us. But price bracketing will also be a factor, right? And then in our MLS, there's some added things to consider. Like if you do a 5% or greater price reduction, we use Matrix. I don't know if you guys are on Matrix as well in your market. And you may have this rule as well, right? A 5% reduction allows you to get a new MLS number. Doesn't reset your days on market, but at least gives you a new MLS number. And that could cause it to appear on somebody's searches, right? Actually, I didn't put this in the slide, but here's a best practice for you with price reductions. Anytime you do a price reduction, change the primary photo, right? Because people swipe through their phone and they recognize, oh, I've seen that one, seen that one, seen that one. So if you just do the price reduction and don't change the photo, there's a chance they might even miss the price reduction if they just skim past it, right? So change the primary photo, and that'll increase the chances that they'll look at it more closely. Right? So now I've inoculated you on Friday. You're praying through the weekend that we get lots of traffic and we get an offer at some point. And then on Tuesday, I'm calling you and I'm letting you know, okay, we did have a showing, but I already talked to that agent. There's no offer coming. So it's time to talk about a price reduction, right? Bonus script. So if you get a listing where the seller says, I hear everything you're saying, it's great advice, and I don't care, I want to list it higher, you can use a script to get them to pre-agree to a price reduction, right? If we start at your price and we get less than whatever number of showings you want to designate, and we can talk about that, we should an adjustment. we should do an adjustment after 1 week so we don't squander all of that best traffic window, right? Because we've already explained the best traffic window in these conversations. And they'll go, okay. Or what's the worst case scenario? They go, I want to list it at 925 and I don't care how long it takes. Right? That's that. I'm going to fire that seller. I'm not taking that listing. Right? Because here's the problem. If 925 is too high and it's languishing on the market, he's not getting 925, right? That's what sellers don't realize. They think, well, I just have to be more patient. More patience means low ball offers, right? Or at least lower than asking offers. I mean, how many of you noticed? Like it used to be, I've been doing this 38 years, and it used to be, if a house was on the market for more than 30 days, that's when you'd start to get low ball offers. Then we went through the white hot markets of 2019, 2020, and part of 2021. And all of a sudden, people started thinking, if it doesn't sell in the first weekend, I'm going to hit him in the knees, right? I'm going to lowball him after 7 days. And that's the market we're in today. You still have people that are aggressive like that. So I just don't want, I want to deliver success, and I want to help this person move to that next chapter. So you kind of wrap up all these conversations and steer them back to what's their emotional why, right? If it's, I want to sell so I can be near a family in Florida, well, the market doesn't care that you want to net X or you want to get 925 or whatever the number is. The market doesn't care, right? You guys all know what the definition of market value is? It's what a buyer's willing to pay and a seller's willing to accept. That's it, right? So there's nowhere in there does it say, and what as long as the net to the seller is, blah, blah. No, it's what a buyer's willing to pay and a seller's willing to accept. That's why, think about this just for a sec. In the last several years, we've been in a seller's market. How many low appraisals have we seen? Like, not many, right? It's not zero, but it's very low. And that's because your purchase and sale agreement is evidence of market value. So the appraiser's goal is to bring it in at that number because you've got what a buyer was willing to pay. You've got what a seller was willing to accept in writing, right? So it's always fun, right, to kind of prepare a seller for disappointment. But that's why that color picture CMA tour process is so powerful, because it gets them to be more realistic, right? So in some cases, I'll actually get the seller to sign the paperwork for a price reduction, and we'll just post date it. So they feel comfortable that I'm not going to implement it sooner than what we agreed, right? So in our forms, we have a price adjustment form. I'll print it, have the 900 number in my example, just to stick with that example. I'll have them sign it and date it for a week from now. And then I'll drop the price at the 1 week mark. And I do that when I kind of don't really trust them, right? And trust isn't the best word. I can tell that they're really on the fence and they might change their mind, but I'm more persuasive in person than I will be a week from now trying to convince them to sign a new one, right? So let's just sign it now. Look at that. Boom. We're at the end. When I ran 4 minutes long, I apologize. What questions do you guys have on that information? And then I always also offer any scripting questions relating to anything if you're curious to know what I would say in a different circumstance. So do you guys, Allison, I saw you had your hand up initially and then you took it down.
Yeah. I'm wondering, do you explain to them that, when they go look at a house and it's been on the market for 90 days, do they want to offer full price, so that they understand that the longer they're on market, they're not going to get full price?
I do if they're not getting it. Like because I say, and the phenomenon, right, is when you start too high and you've been on the market, you're going to get lower and lower offers. And if they look at me with a blank stare, that's when I'll use that to illustrate what I mean. Because you're right, it's a great dialogue to get somebody to realize, yeah, I wouldn't do that either, right?
Yeah.
I probably only need to go that far less than 15% of the time, like
Yeah.
10 or so, because most people they kind of get it, right?
Yep.
But absolutely, if they don't, I will. Christine.
When they're asking about, oh, what do you charge about commission? I just had that the other day. Very arrogant seller. Oh my God. But what do you say? Like, do you try to add do you just put your commission in there? Like say, okay, I take 3% for myself and whatever you're willing to give the buyer's agent, or you don't even bring up the buyer's agent? Do you try to get
Great
something for
question.
them?
Yeah. So here's what I say. And let me preface it real briefly with depends when they're asking it, right? If they're asking it as I'm going for the close, then I will give the dialogue that you just asked about. But if they're asking it before I've even booked the appointment, I say my fees range between 0 and 7%. And their brain hears 0. And I go, when can I come see the house? So I'll use that dialogue to book the appointment. Now back to this part of the process, right? At the end of my listing presentation, I go, Christine, I've shown you a lot today. Did anything stand out to you? And when I say that, I have a slide in my slide deck that has all 155 steps to my 155 step system, right? And they go, well, I really liked X or Y, or what most people say is, I just can't believe how comprehensive it is. You guys think of everything. And I go, great, thank you. Am I the right guy to help you get your home sold? That's it. That's the close. And if they say anything other than yes, I buckle in for objection handler. So this is where that comes in. But if they say yes, I go, great, excited to be working with you. And I extend my hand, I shake their hand, and I close my laptop and I pull out the folder. If they say, well, it depends on what you're going to charge me, I say, my fee is 3%. You get all of that for 3%. So I'm not saying it the way you said it, but I am saying the same thing, right? But here's why I'm saying it the way I'm saying it. When we sat down and as they looked at my system more and more, they're like, man, this is awesome. I hope he'll do it for 4%, like Redfin or any of the discounters, right? When I say 3%, what does his brain do? It releases endorphins because I said a number lower than what he was hoping I was going to say. So I literally say what I just said. My fee is you get all of that for just 3%. And then I zip it and I put a pregnant pause in there on purpose so that the endorphins have time to release in his brain. And then after the pregnant pause, I'll say, and then all we have to do is figure out what to offer a buyer's agent. And so they get this endorphin rush, and then reality sets in, and then they're asking for advice. Oh yeah, do we have to do that? Or, oh yeah, I've read that we don't have to do that. Whatever they're going to say, right? And I always say, well, here's the thing. The irony of the NAR settlement is you never had to pay anything. That was always your prerogative, right? So the fact that a lawsuit was brought over it is kind of goofy to me, but okay. Here's the thing though. In our market, we have 30,000 buyer's agents, right? I say 30,000 because that's the total membership of our MLS. And I just add buyer's agents. So they think, oh my God, that's a lot of buyer's agents, right? 30,000 buyer's agents. And we don't really want to stick our finger in the eye of them, right? So here's my advice. We should survey the market and see what other sellers in your area are offering. And we just want to blend in. We don't need to stand out on the high sign because then you're overpaying. We don't want to stand out on the low side because then there's agents that won't even show it. We just want to blend in. And if I'm talking to a man, I'll go, have you ever noticed like the best NBA referees are the ones that you just don't notice? That's kind of what we're aiming for. And they go, oh, that's pretty smart. You have any idea what it is for my neighborhood? And I'll go, well, I haven't done the research yet, but my sense in this area is it's X, but I'm going to validate it and look for like at least 20 recent sales and we'll see what they were offering. Now I know that dialogue might be harder for you in your market because your MLS may not show the commissions, right? So what you'll have to do is a historical, right? But you can still say, in the past, sellers have offered X, right? Which I'm sorry you guys all have that difficulty. I am 100% against the NAR settlement, and I am a member of NAR. I think they absolutely took us back 25 years. 1997 was when the real estate brokerage REBRA here in Washington State passed. That's when buyer brokerage commissions got solidified and separated. And now they want to hide it. So my MLS actually told NAR to kick rocks. They said, we are not removing the buyer brokerage commission out of the MLS because we want transparency. And I'm happy that I work here.
That's true. How is that not transparent when you're putting it in the MLS?
Right. I mean, that's the stupidity of it, right? And isn't it interesting? Now I'm on my soapbox. But isn't it interesting that the main plaintiff in that class action suit opened a flat fee brokerages the day after the settlement was achieved? Huh. Self-serving bastard is what he is. And this is being recorded, so his attorneys know where to find me. Hey. All right. What's that, Kevin?
Yeah, I have a quick question. What if the you mentioned when you're talking to the seller over the phone, you say, "Why my fees anywhere from 0 to 7%." What if after your presentation, they said, "Well, what's the 0% option?"
I have a slide in my slide deck for a sell for free program. Do you guys want me to explain that next Friday?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're fun.
I want to see this house for free.
All right.
For free.
I will next. So that's what the 28th, right? We'll cover sell for free. And I'll tell you right now, some of the latest legislation doesn't allow me to use the word free, and I haven't rebranded or revised it, but I'll need to. But I'll explain how it works, and then you guys can decide if you want to implement it in your market. Sound good?
Yeah, I was just curious on how someone came back with that. Like, well, when you said, "Oh, I see the 3% option," but hey, what's that 0% option?
Yeah. So, in the interest of time, I won't even begin to explain. That's why I will go deep dive on it next Friday. And I'm surprised you didn't ask about the 7.
Oh, well, that was going to be my next question. It's like, well, what?
Yeah. I've gotten probably in my career close to 100 listing agreements signed with 7%, 4 to me. And I'll just end with this. Price is only an issue in the absence of value. So if you provide enough value, you can charge whatever you're worth.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know it takes, confidence, and that comes with experience. And so it's hard to do when you're starting out, but deliver results. That's also built into my presentation is my results. And my results are 103.8% of list as compared to the MLS average of 100.4. So I have that slide in my slide deck, and I point out to them that I'm in the 100.4 number. If they took my sales out of it, it would go down because I'm at almost 104%. And I've literally had people go, "So your system pays for itself." That's right, sir. Can I quote you on that? And I do quote him on that. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me. I hope you got some value, and I hope you use these dialogues few and far between because your sellers are being realistic, and that color picture CMA tour will help you do that. All right.
Thank you.
Nice to see you all. Have a wonderful day and a nice weekend.
Happy Friday.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.